I've been working on some theory, and I kind of come across something that took me a long time to figure out that I just wanted to share with someone out there. Maybe someone can find it useful. Um, so I've been practicing my scales. I decided to take the approach that I think a lot of people probably do, which is to just memorize scales up and down the neck. So I started out with, my C scale all the way up to the octave, and then recognize my relative minors, and then went to G, and so I was sort of like overwhelmed by the fact that I would have to memorize all of these notes, even though I could recognize patterns and the differences between there were relatively minor differences between each scale. I recognized that there were just a few notes difference. There was just a few notes difference between most scales and C, but even so, it was a lot to think about. So then I came across the modes, which I'd always heard people talk about, but I never knew how to apply it to actual playing. So I'm not going to get into the modes here, but there's 7 church modes, or 7 modes that are traditionally called the church modes because they're, I guess, a system of melodic intervals that somebody in church at some point in history defined. From what I can, based on the naming, it goes back a long way. So they're called Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, or Locrian. I'm not sure which it is. So anyway, there's 7 modes. Each one has a personality, and essentially it's if you pick a key and play all the notes in a scale in that key, the modes are basically playing the scale starting on a different note each time. So you're playing all the same notes in a key, but you're starting on a different note. So where this gets cool though for me is when I started to learn, I realized that the 7 modes are always in the same order. So if I just learn the shapes, I can move up and down the neck playing the modes in order and essentially be playing the scale. So if I start in C on the root and I start with, say, a major scale, which is Ionian, then I can play up and down the neck starting with Ionian and just go in order through, I have to look because I'm half asleep, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. So this is probably easier to demonstrate than explain, but what's really cool about this is the order stays the same. So whether I start on the major scale, the two modes you'll use the most will be major and minor. Aeolian is the minor scale. Ionian is the major scale. So I can start on either mode in a key and immediately know how to play the whole neck in that key just by keeping the modes in order. So to further simplify it, once I started playing it on the 6th string, I realized that there's a pattern that's very small that repeats over and over again up and down the neck. It's not super apparent on a 4th string because you don't have enough time to get into the repetition of the pattern when you're in one position on the neck. But when I started trying it on 6th string, it became so obvious. And then all of a sudden, not only do I just have to play 7 modes, but all I have to do is repeat the pattern over and over again. So let me provide an example. So on this bass, let's start on, since it's 6 strings, so I'll be starting on the D here. So I want to play, so I'm playing a song and I want to be able to get all over the place, say in D minor. So I know My D's here, and I know that I'm starting in Aeolian. So my pattern for Aeolian is this. So if I want to go up and down the neck, my next mode up would be, I'm not used to naming these, I'm just used to playing them, would be Locrian, but I skip, so here's another thing. I decided to compact the modes to make them make more sense. So I essentially eliminated Locrian and Lydian. They're probably the two least used modes, and I can just take one note from each of them and put it into a different mode and still cover the same thing. So I've combined Locrian with Ionian and Lydian with Mixolydian. I believe that's right. It may be Lydian with Phrygian. I can't remember. But anyway, I'll show you the shapes. The important thing is just to remember the shapes. Okay, so back to Aeolian. So I'm going to start in D minor, and I'm going to play up the neck just by using the modes, all in D minor. So after minor comes major. Then comes Dorian. Then comes Phrygian. A little sloppy, it's early. And then comes Mixolydian. Oops. And then back to minor for Aeolian. Oops. So that's like from minor to minor all the way up the neck, hitting every note in the key of D minor, which for me before was like, shit, on 6th string, I was like, man, I can't remember all that. But really all I'm doing is repeating a simple pattern. So 2 patterns really. I'm using 5 modes, and I remember what order they're in, and then I just remember where to start in the pattern. So here's the pattern. What's killer too is that because it repeats in a pattern, so if you're starting on a higher string, like say you're on a, okay, we'll say you're on a 6th string and you're starting with a G and you're in minor. So the minor pattern applies going up, but then you're like, oh, what happens going down? Well, it just continues. So essentially, this is my minor pattern going up. So going down, if I continue my pattern, I get this, which is Phrygian. So I just remember Phrygian is below, I don't even have to remember this, but the way it works out is Phrygian is below Aeolian. In the same way, if I'm playing the relative major for G, which is A sharp, then below it, see, this is where I mix in Locrian. I add this A here. Normally Locrian would be like, it would start on the A, and then Ionian would start on the next note, which is the A sharp. But if I just add the A, it simplifies the pattern, and it combines 2 modes. So back to my point that the relative major for G would be A sharp, and because this is my pattern, I know that below that would be this pattern, which is Mixolydian. So Phrygian and Mixolydian are below Aeolian and Ionian / Locrian. This place sounds complicated, but it's really not. So this is the point I'm trying to get to. This is the pattern that I use. And once you learn it, you'll start in all different places for different modes, but it always repeats. So let's start with my major example, and I can show you the pattern there. So I don't know how you think of patterns, but I think of them like in my head as dots, like you would see in a tab. So skip a space, and then half step, skip a space, and then it reverses. Skip a space, half step, skip a space, half step, and then just 2 notes for the next string, and then shift down. That's the whole pattern, up and down the neck. So let me show you again, and try not to use inane descriptions. So here, if I'm starting on the B string, and this is the same thing for any bass as long as the intervals are the same. So for a 4 string, it would go the same way. But so just watch my fingers. Reverse this pattern. So it's simple. It just goes. The first 2 are the same. The second 2 are reverse. And then 2 notes on the next string. Wait. 2 notes on the next string. Starting on the 3rd fret still. Shift down, same as our original pattern, but down one fret. And if I were to keep going, it would go 1 more time in this position. So let me show you how that applies. So we're doing major, rocking along here. It's hard to talk about this and do it. Then I would shift up. So this is my major hand. I would shift up to, starting in the last note that I was reaching for, I would shift up to Dorian, which is the next mode. And that pattern would start here. You got to remember where these modes start. So this is Dorian. So essentially Dorian is starting right here. So, and then continuing the pattern, and the pattern loops. So Dorian's starting there, and I go to my 2, and I go to my shift down a step, 1 more time down a step, switch direction. Then I move up to the next mode. So we've done Ionian, Dorian, there's my Dorian, and then Phrygian comes next. So Dorian's here. Phrygian uses the last 2 notes of Dorian. So the pattern is now starting on this, but the second one. So back here in Ionian, well, Phrygian is going to start here. So I can play it here, or if I'm moving up the neck, it would be there. So is that where it is? Oh, my C, sorry. G, sorry. I'm still getting used to the 6th string. So back to Phrygian. So I'm continuing the pattern. I need to think of names for each of these lines. So it's all of a sudden it's really easy to get up and down the neck like crazy. Phrygian, and then Mixolydian comes next, and that starts on the 2. Remember, I keep calling this the 2 because it's the only note in my shape. Now these can be played in any shape you want. This is the shape that I saw someone doing it, and I modified it a little bit. So, because I wanted everything to be in triplets, and this is the only one that didn't really work out in triplets, so I call this the 2. So this one starts on the 2. So it goes 2. And it ends up on the 2 again. And back to the minor. So this probably didn't make any sense at all, but in my head, this simplified everything. All of a sudden, I just had to know 6 lines of a pattern, and know that I could stop and start it in the right place and be able to play in any key. So this translates to literally any key. So when you're at the jam and dudes are like, "Oh, I don't like to play in D sharp minor because it's too hard. It's a hard scale." It's not a freaking hard scale. It's exactly like the other scales. So like I start in D sharp minor. I'm playing Aeolian on D sharp, and if I go down and I follow it all the way to the bottom string, then I'm looking at by the time I get down to my B string, I'm using my Ionian shape. And then Dorian is above it. So I don't even think about D sharp minor anymore. Now I'm like going into just patterns. So there's D sharp minor. I'm going down to Ionian, move up to Dorian. I'm still in D sharp minor. Phrygian. And then you start to see repeating where's that places that pattern repeats, moving left to right. Anyway, so I'm going to try to do a different video with this simplified maybe, but hopefully somebody got the point in this. Maybe I'll try to write out the patterns. I don't know. I got this from a bunch of different places, and it's sort of, I don't know if this is obvious and everyone's doing it already, but when I boiled it down to my mind, it got really simple all of a sudden. I don't normally play 6 string. I've been playing 4 string for like 20 years, and I picked up a 6 string and started using modes, and all of a sudden everything changed. So I went back to my 4 string. Suddenly I could play up and down the neck without even thinking on the 4 string. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.